Hi everybody and welcome to NJConfidential down on the farm. Really fantastic to be here today. I'm at Full Circle Farm down in West Sussex and I'm going to be talking to Tom. So this is to complement the podcast, so the NJConfidential podcast with Tom. Please have a listen to it and you'll be able to have a look around the farm a little bit later.
Here we are. This is the Garden Army Market Garden. Now, this is the old walled garden. This was last farmed and in production in 1981. It's missing a bit of the wall, which we're going to replace with a fence eventually. But you can kind of make out where the plots are and things. We've got the old cold frames here, and then we've got an old fruit cage. This will turn into a new lean-to area, so an area for planting up and potting up and sorting out the veg.
Tom, do you know when this was first built? Because this is quite ornate.
It goes back to 1820.
Oh wow!
A long way back.
Yeah.
Yeah, we looked at some pretty old maps. It goes back a long way, and you can still see these structures here. Then.
Okay.
So this roof is going to be replaced at the moment. It's condensed fibre cement board or asbestos, some of it as well. So that's all coming off and being replaced. And then this whole building will be a craft room and a kind of a canteen as well.
Brilliant.
So yeah, somewhere warm to go in the winter because it's not always lovely and sunny like it is today.
No, I know. We've picked a fantastic day actually, haven't we? So
a lovely rhubarb coming up there.
Okay.
So we've got these are old cold frames. So these are used for once the young plants come out of the greenhouse, they then go into these frames and they normally have a big kind of window that goes over the top. So we're going to rebuild the windows and reinstate some of the brickwork. Full of lovely rhubarb at the moment, so it's just starting to flower. So we're going to cut those flower heads off and keep the leaves and the stems growing a little bit longer for us. Okay. So in this garden, it's really important for us at the Garden Army to have this farm, this garden accessible for everyone. So where Ronnie is at the moment, just sniffing around, probably looking at some baby rabbits or a mouse or something under there.
Yeah.
This would all be raised beds all the way around the outside. You can see one in the middle there. They'll be on the outside. So that's our kind of disabled access. So everyone, even if they're in a chair, can access all their different beds.
Brilliant.
And they can get amongst the herbs and the fruit and veg and things as well. The middle section, that's going to be covered in cardboard next week, and then we'll put the compost over the top and start ridging up the beds.
Brilliant.
In the area right at the back, we've got those bushes, they're red and black currant bushes, and that will be a big fruit cage in there and have all our soft fruit. So we'll wander around down
Fantastic.
the path.
Yeah, please. Yeah. So, Tom, you mentioned to me, I think earlier, that you are going to have this as like an educational area, and because I remember you said about the raised beds, and you might be teaching people how to make them. Or?
Yeah. So we've got many things because there was two ways of doing this. We could have built the raised beds all ourselves, and then and just put them in place, or we can actually get people involved in actually building the raised beds and learning how to do it. So that's why we've started this very early on, so everyone can be involved in the whole construction of the farm, so they can learn everything from building these raised beds, planting, laying paths. So the volunteers laid this path first,
brilliant,
all the way around, and this is the educational side of it. You can learn all these different things, and eventually we're going to be working with some groups of kids from school, so they can come here and learn all this, and then hopefully we can start launching an MVQ system later, and they can actually then be qualified. So if they come here once a week to learn these different things, they can learn land-based construction skills or agricultural, horticultural skills, and actually get an MVQ from that. So when they leave school, they've actually got a qualification to do something they're interested in.
Superb.
And then hopefully later on, as we get bigger and stronger, we can start launching apprenticeships and actually having several apprentices here. And start growing our own farmers, because we're running out of farmers as well. So we need to educate the next generation on a more sustainable, regenerative way of farming. So we can look at protecting our environment and protecting the way we grow our food and just slowing down a bit. This is all about slowing down. Brilliant. None of this is new. In the way we farm and we grow our food, none of this is new. This is a very old-fashioned way of growing our food and producing our meats, our eggs, our veg and our fruit. This is how we used to do things before we became more and more mechanised and wanted cheaper and faster food. So we're just taking our foot off the gas, going back in order to go forward. And
doing it, that's brilliant. Yeah. I wish people could actually smell this as well, because there's some freshly cut grass, which is absolutely
this again. It's been
fantastic.
Many years. I've been cutting grass for so many years. You kind of lose that smell, but I do smell it occasionally.
It's lovely. It's really nice. So can you tell us about this area, because I can see some chicken wire at the bottom there.
Yeah, so this is going to
it's-
be our giant chicken pens. You can see we haven't cut the grass here.
Yeah.
We're going to leave this nice and long. There were lots of daffodils which had died down, so we're leaving them a bit longer as well. But the chickens will come in here. We've been donated a lovely big shed, and we need to get another shed actually, because we want to have about 100 chickens in here.
Right, I was
all...
just about to ask how many.
Yeah,
so
that's
we're
going to have about 100 to 150. And they'll all be rescue chickens, so they come from the intensive chicken farming industry. The life expectancy of a laying hen is about 18 months. After 18 months, they start laying bigger and bigger eggs, so they become less productive. So it takes them longer to make that bigger egg. So after 18 months, they normally turn into cattle dog food, or they're just incinerated.
Right.
So we jump in and we rehome them, they come here, and they live the rest of their life out here. They still lay me an egg a day.
Yeah.
So we'll get 100 up to 150 eggs
Oh, that's
a day.
brilliant. Yeah.
Which we'll sell in the farm shop to help fund the rest of the project. And we'll also sell them to chefs and things as well. And they will be fully free-range organic eggs.
Cool.
Not that we're going to register organic. People often ask me why am I registered organic? But we don't want to pay £2.5 a year for a certificate.
Oh, just
to say what we're doing already. So I'm a very open farm, so anyone can come here anytime, and they can look at the way we're growing and what we're doing with the soil and things, and they can see that we never use any chemicals whatsoever. Brilliant. So I might use a bit of WD-40 in the wheelbarrow. That's about it.
And that's about it.
Nothing on the soil.
Tom, I'm really surprised. I think maybe other people might be surprised as well. You're just going to put chickens in the grass here.
Yeah.
So is this?
Yeah. They will absolutely love this. Well, they won't love it for the first 3 or 4 weeks. They won't come out of the shed, and that's not because I'm being cruel. It's because they're absolutely terrified of the outside.
Right. Okay.
They've never been outside.
Okay.
So they stay inside the shed. We open the door, and they will look out the door, but they won't come out here. So we gradually have to feed them more and more outside. Eventually, they will come outside, start scratching around a little bit. Then we start scattering their food. So they have to go and find their food.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And that's when they realise they're chickens. They start scratching around in the ground. And then they find worms and insects and crickets and all sorts of things in here.
Yep.
This is heaven for them. And then they realise they're chickens. And then they start setting up the hierarchy. And then one of the first jobs they probably do once they've settled in is set up the spa, the chicken spa. So the first thing they do, they'll find an area under a tree normally, scratch around the ground and create little dust baths.
Oh,
and
right.
They roll around the dust. It's normally where the sun comes up first thing in the morning, so they can stay and warm up in the sun. And they kind of have a bit of a mother's meeting and all chat about what they're going to do today.
Brilliant.
And sort out who's going to be the top of the pecking order and who's going to be what poor chicken's going to be at the bottom. And that's how they that's their kind of little life. And every morning they come out, have their dust bath, and scratch around. It'll take them about 3 or 4 months, and this will be completely bald. There'll be hardly any grass left.
Okay. Yeah.
But when that happens, we're opening up a little door. We're going to put the fence over there, and they go into the orchard there.
Ah, right.
Which is about an acre and a half of orchard, which all the apples that are grown in there go into the brewery, which we've got on site, which makes amazing cider, which is on sale now. It's a missing link brewery, and you can so they scratch around there and they keep the grass down in there, and we can move them between the 2 sites. So they've always got lovely fresh grass and fresh land and things to peck around that as well.
There's something you mentioned to me earlier, though, Tom, was about the insects, that they could also control insects maybe on in different parts.
Chickens are our gardeners as well.
Yeah.
So chickens make really good seed beds. So if we stuck the chickens in there, where it's a bit kind of rough and ready at the moment, they would scratch around for weeks, and that little scratch around their little claws will level that off.
Right.
Big clods of soil down and create a lovely, perfect seed bed.
Brilliant.
At the same time, they're scratching around picking out any weeds and things. And if we had crops in there and they're full of caterpillars or blackfire aphids, they would quite happily go through and peck and eat all those little insects. That's food for them. So if we had an infestation of pest or disease, we could put them in there. They'll eat away all the dead plants that have got the disease.
Bring the chickens in.
And then they'll peck away all the insects as well. And they'll do the same thing in the orchard. So if we have certain caterpillars or something that we don't want, the chickens will go and find them and eat them, and that controls the kind of circle of life, really.
Brilliant.
That's what would happen in the natural world. Eventually we'll have pigs, and then we use the chickens with the pigs. They can be in the same pen together. And this is Ronnie doing his rounds. He found a rabbit earlier, so now he's figured out there might be rabbits in the long grass, so he's having a quick look around.
He's going to thoroughly enjoy it, I think.
Yeah.
Absolutely thoroughly enjoy it. Okay, brilliant. Can we get down to the main field?
Let's go and have a look, yeah.
Brilliant, thank you.
So this is what we call our 4-acre market garden. It's not actually ours. This is something we do. This is the kind of commercial side of Full Circle Farms and the Garden Army. The Garden Army is our care farm, which is where we've just been. And then this is in the field next door, and this is run by my other company, the Full Circle Farms. So what we do at Full Circle Farms is we give chefs the opportunity to have their own plot of land. We create their market garden for them, and then we manage it, harvest all the produce and deliver it straight back to them. Slightly different here, they're going to bring out their own vans and pick up the produce from there, but we'll still harvest it for them. Now this is a kind of mixture between permaculture and commercial agriculture. So in commercial agriculture, every year or every autumn you go through and you plough the field, and then you go back over with a power harrow, break that soil down, and then you drill your seeds in the whole lot, and you'd have one single crop in this whole area. What we do is we have ploughed this, and then we power harrowed it. That is the only time we ever dig this soil.
Just the once, yeah?
Just the once.
Once, yeah.
Just once.
Okay, cool.
And then what we do is up here we've got some beds we've ridged up. So we used an old potato planter from 1950, and we planted, I think, 12 rows of Jerusalem artichokes. And
Okay.
they were planted here for a reason. Jerusalem artichokes grow up to about 8 foot tall. We have quite a strong wind coming across here, so sometimes it comes from that way. So we plant these, grow up to 8 foot tall and create a windbreak, and also blocks the view from people on the road so they can't see what we're doing down here. And then behind that we've got potatoes in these rows here, which again we use the same potato planter.
Yep.
Two people sit on the back and they keep putting the potatoes into a little drop chute, and that rotates around and drops down into the ground.
So you have potatoes in here now?
So yeah, we've got Jerusalem artichokes, and then these
Potatoes?
wider beds here. Potatoes start from here. So these are potatoes, and these are heritage variety. So this one is blight resistant, they're not, but if you mix them together, they kind of help each other out a bit. Once all this crop is finished, this entire plot here, which is 30 metres by 75 metres, will be a kind of a wheat or a grain. We will then harvest by hand with a scythe, dry out in the old-fashioned way, and then put it through an old-fashioned threshing machine, and then it would go off to the bakery or the miller, who would then make flour, and the bakery would then make the loaves out of it. So really old-fashioned way.
Fantastic, yeah.
Not at all the way it's done modern in the modern world, but it's something it'd be something fun to do. It'd be interesting if we get some old heritage varieties of the wheats and the grains and things, and it kind of reminds us about how to appreciate our food, the work that goes into it. So that's what we're going to do here.
Do you have a miller set up already, or?
Yeah, so Flint Owl Bakery are people who own this plot.
Yeah.
They pay us to build it and maintain it, and all the produce goes back to them.
Brilliant.
So any produce from this plot goes back to them. So they've got about 2.5 tons of Jerusalem artichoke heading their way.
Right. Okay. So they pretty much paid for it up front. You're growing it for them.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, he pays for all the materials. I obviously consult and I tell him what materials he needs. Give him a list. He rings up, pays for it, gets delivered, and we put it together. So we've got 700 metres of deer fencing to put up, and we've luckily the tractor that's on the bigger farm here got a post knocker, so we whack them in.
Right.
Otherwise, if you do it by hand, you end up like on a Schwarzenegger.
So that's what the posts are.
That's
that
what the
just
posts are around the
okay.
outside there. So they have the bottom half is rabbit netting, the top half is stock fencing, and it's then high enough that the deers won't jump over, but the rabbits won't come through the bottom.
Yeah.
It's slightly cheaper to do it that way as well.
Okay. Cool.
So this soil is pretty good. We've got about 3 foot of lovely loamy rich topsoil, then it hits sandstone, hard clay, then into sandstone as it goes further down. So it's very free draining. You can drive in here in the winter, you won't get stuck at all. We've put a new driveway in from the gateway over there, so eventually there'll be a little building here which will be our sorting room, and all the produce comes up to the sorting room, gets put in the boxes, and then goes off to all the individual bakeries that we're supplying. To give you an idea of how productive these sites can be, when I first started Full Circle Farms, I used to rent plots this size. So this is 30 by 50, so it's about 1/4 acre. And from this plot this size, I used to supply Robin Gill's restaurants. At the time he only had 2, well it's 3, it's 2 1/4, it's a little tiny restaurant as well. But I supplied him with 90% of his fruit and veg throughout the entire year from one plot this size. Now, if you think about how many people have been through his restaurant, one of the restaurants, Sorella, I think seats 75 people. The dairy, it's moved now, but it's maybe a 50 seater, and they're turning those tables sometimes 3 times a night, all the way through the year, and lunchtimes. You think about how many thousands of people are fed from one plot this size, and that paid my mortgage and my bills.
Yeah.
So it is possible to make a living
Yeah.
out of small scale farming. You don't need to
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
several hundred acres and £100,000 tractor. But when I first started, I thought that's what I needed to do, but I couldn't afford it. So this is how
Yeah.
I started, just because I can manage to plot this size by myself, and I knew I could produce enough veg. I had no idea it was called permaculture or market gardening. It was just an easy way to me for not to go and work in London again. So this is how it kind of started, and from that we then developed the system. So now we have a machine on the back of the tractor that ridges these beds up, because we used to do this by hand.
Okay.
But when you've got 4 acres to do,
Yeah.
it takes a long time. So
Yeah.
we did start doing it by hand, and then I saved up some money, brought the machine, adapted it slightly so it made the beds as wide as I wanted them. What took us about 4 weeks to do about, I think, 25, 30 beds, I did 175 beds in 2 days.
Right.
So we do use machinery. I mean, I use my tractor for that as well. My tractor is from 1950 as well, so it's still an old tractor.
Yeah.
I don't want to waste lots of money on really big, expensive tractors. But then it means that we've got the beds ridged up. The lads and the ladies now are covering them in compost, putting the little hoop saver, which I have net saver, and the girls down here and Ross are just planting out some Swiss chard, I think. So I think there's just over 2,000 Swiss chard going in there. And we'll be able to harvest those all the way through the year, right through into December, and then they might even survive the winter over into next year as well.
Brilliant.
We're just going past the raspberries. 400 raspberry canes have gone in here, 2 different varieties, Octavia and Bliss, both heavy croppers, and this will have a big net over the whole lot to stop the birds coming in.
Yeah.
So I get half a chance.
Yeah, they'd love that, wouldn't they?
They would love that, yeah. So you can see the difference. We've got this variety, we've got the leaves coming up here, so they're already coming into leaf and bud.
Yeah.
And then the other variety at the back, you can just see they're a little bit behind.
Okay.
So they're just starting to bud up now, so you can see the difference. These will crop first,
Yeah.
and as they're starting to slow down, the other variety then they take over. So that means we can get a harvest of raspberries for a good few months.
Yeah.
We haven't relied on just one variety. It's always good to have a good mixture of varieties.
Okay.
It's also the way we plant our veg out. So at the moment we're putting this row in here at the moment, and that's the Swiss chard going in. The bed next to that will have maybe lettuce or salad or some kind of salad crop in there, and then the next bed might have a kale, and then we mix them up. There's 2 reasons for this. We're not monocropping. So if we planted the next 15 beds with Swiss chard,
Yeah.
if Swiss chard got a disease, it will spread through the entire crop pretty
lot.
quickly. But if we
Okay.
put these kind of fire breaks in, it can't jump through the crop as quickly.
Right.
So it helps slow it down. Ronnie, come on, off there. Ronnie hasn't quite figured out he's not allowed to walk on his bed yet. Come on, mate. So the beds will also be companion planted as well. So we're growing a lot of from seed, things like marigold and nasturtiums and different things like that. I have some borage around the outside, which is a wildflower, which is also edible, and that attracts some of the insects and pests away from our main crop, so they have a better chance of surviving.
Okay.
But the main kind of key to all of this is it starts with the soil. If we have healthy, nutritious, rich soil, the plants can draw up all those minerals and nutrients and become stronger themselves, which means they're more resilient to any pest or disease or attack from pests and things as well. They're a stronger plant.
Right.
If we
Okay.
try and mimic what nature does by feeding the soil with drugs, basically, it's
Yeah.
very similar to if I take lots of steroids. If I take the steroids, I become big and lump and bumpy and full of muscles, and all the boys and girls can't see me, even though the dad bod is the fashionable thing. But the same thing with our soil. If I take steroids, I get big and lumpy, full of muscle, then I might take testosterone, then I might take something else, and then I'll be depressed and not big enough, so I might take an upper, then I might take a downward, so I can't. I'm trying to balance my life with drugs, or end up killing myself. It's not good for my body. Same thing for our soil. If we try to artificially replicate what nature does by itself, we can't replicate that basically. We end up ruining the soil and unbalancing the structure in the soil. This is why we only dig the soil once. That life that's in the soil, which we're only starting to understand now, there's more life in a teaspoon of soil than there is people in this world. And we're only just starting to understand that. So that life in that soil needs to find our plants, because our plants know that life is there. And what happens is as that plant grows, it sends down its roots to find the water, anchors itself into the ground, and then it sends out tiny fibrous roots, and on the end of those fibrous roots it puts out little food parcels. Those food parcels are carbon. So when we talk about carbon and sequestration, putting carbon back into the soil, this is what we're talking about. A plant would take in carbon dioxide, turn that into starches and sugars, use some of that to grow itself through photosynthesis. The rest of it will put down into these food sacs on the end of these fibrous roots. And what it's doing is it's putting it out as bait, if you like. It wants to attract the life in soil to come to it. So in the soil there's all this hyphae, fungal life, which travels through our worm tunnels and things, searching for these pockets of food. And in that process, it's coming from deep out of the soil, past all the bedrock, drawing those minerals and nutrients with it. And when it comes to find that plant and that food sac on the plant can touch that mineral or nutrient and transfer it into its own body. That's how we end up with nutrient-dense veg. That only happens if you haven't kept disturbing the soil. If you keep disturbing the soil, you break down that life and you break down that circle of life as well. It can't happen. And then if we put artificial fertilisers on there to try and mimic that, you unbalance the structure of the soil, confuses life, and it doesn't work.
Right.
And then every year you have to put more and more on. And then if we use weed killers to kill weeds off, that also kills the life in the soil as well. So just leave it.
Right.
It's plain and simple as that. Leave the soil to do its own thing. Plants will find the nutrients and minerals that they need to survive. And then a nutrient-dense veg, which is then healthier for all of us. And then we can stop going to Holland and Barrett and all sorts and buying supplements and minerals because we'll be eating veg that is actually good for you. So that's what this is like. This is for. So we've got the beds between these walkways. They've got the wood chip on it. Luckily, we've got hundreds of tree surgeons coming in and dump all this lovely wood chip. That goes down the section in the middle and creates our walkways. Now the reason the beds are this wide, years ago when I first started, and I can demonstrate this for you, I planted out loads and loads of seeds, and I planted like 30 rows of beetroot. When you come to harvest 30 rows of beetroot, you've got to lean across and try and pick out the ones you want, because the chefs can choose what size they want. We pick them out. I'm 6'4". It's not gonna work.
Not the best.
What I decided to do is create the beds so I could straddle them. That's why they're this wide. So I can then straddle these beds, walk along and harvest. Bear in mind, we don't dig this soil, so every year we've got more compost and these get higher and higher. So then if you've got something like kale and the bed's this high, plant the kale in, it germinates, now it's up here. It's a lot easier to stand and operate. That's how I developed
I can understand
farm.
that,
That's how the other problem, I thought I'd solved everything then, but what I found out then is the walkways I left between weren't wide enough. So when I crouched down these walkways, my arse was pushing the beds behind and I was teetering over this stuff. So I created the beds to be 22 inches wide. That's the width of my wheelbarrow. It's also the width for me crouched down, so I can now harvest this easy and I've got room to work. That's how I developed the farm, so I can manage it by myself. Now later in life I found out there's actually a way of farming. It's called permaculture. This was created by small-scale farmers needing to manage the land by themselves. That's what this is. We moved on slightly from that, still using the same principles. So the beds up here are actually 1 metre wide. This is a 4-acre market garden, remember. So one person isn't going to manage this by themselves anyway. So we can have a 1 metre wide bed. That's the size the machine will make. It's also the width between my tractor tyres, so I can drive down here. We can unload compost out the back and things, speeds the process up. And also, because there's going to be 2 people working there permanently, you can work opposite sides of the beds and you can both lean across. You're not, neither of those 2 people are ever going to be overstretching their backs or leaning too far across 1 metre bed because we're working either side, so operating 500mm each side. So that's how it's going to operate. So we've taken what I've learned from commercial agriculture and from permaculture and soil science, put them together to create a full circle farms market garden, which is more sustainable, protects the environment, still produces absolutely shed loads of amazing veg and fruit and tubers and all sorts.
Brilliant,
and then there's going to be some cut flowers in here as well, which helps with pollinators as well, but also cut flowers go back into the restaurants as for the tables and things as well. So a lot going on in one small space. And this will probably produce in about 3 years' time, once the soil is improved and we're on top of any kind of really dominant weeds, which normally takes 3 years of careful management. After 3 years, you're into a really good routine. This will probably produce just over £100,000 worth of veg from a 4-acre plot.
Wow, that is fantastic.
And that's relatively moderate, and that's a conservative kind of guess as well. On top of that, We can also do dinners out here, so we can have a long table down the middle. We can have guest
Yeah,
dinners
yeah.
and all sorts. We can charge quite handsomely for that, and
Yeah.
that all goes back into the process and helps pay for more jobs as well. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what it's about at the moment.
It's brilliant. Thanks for the moment, Tom.
No worries.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of NJ Confidential. Today we've been visiting Tom, and the details that you need are fullcirclefarms.co.uk. To find out about the Garden Army, it's garden-army.com. You can contact Tom at garden-army.com, or you can even give him a call 07776 306 236. And don't forget, listen to the podcast on NJ Confidential on Spotify. Thanks for watching.